wealthy man out for his morning walk challenges a quiet girl in the park to a casual game of chess, just to pass the time. He doesn't know she's been surviving on strategy her whole life. What starts as a simple match turns into something far more intense, as the line between street smarts and Grandmaster genius begins to blur. As secrets unfold and the board shifts, one question remains: who's really in control? Before we go any further, drop a comment telling us where in the world you're tuning in from and hit that subscribe button, because tomorrow's story might just change the way you see everything. Ina Sterling didn't speak unless there was something worth saying. That's how she survived. Words cost energy, and energy was currency when your nights were spent behind dumpsters or beneath church awnings, wrapped in a hoodie 3 sizes too big and a blanket that didn't reach her toes. She moved through the world like a ghost, with shoelaces knotted too tight and eyes that gave away nothing. People saw her. Some did, but never for long. A few seconds at most before they kept walking, quickening their pace like her hunger might be contagious. She didn't mind. Being invisible was better than being noticed for the wrong reasons. Each morning, after checking that nothing she stashed behind the benches had been stolen, 2 books, a folded tarp, a broken iPod with no headphones, she claimed the 3rd chess table near the fountain. Not the first one, too exposed, not the last, too close to the joggers and their off-leash dogs. The 3rd was hers. It had a crack running down the center that snagged coat sleeves, but she knew how to lean just right to avoid it. Her pieces were plastic, some scuffed, one pawn missing its head. The board was wood, though, good enough that once a stranger tried to buy it off her. She'd stared at him like he was insane. She didn't sell the only thing that helped her remember who she was. The pieces clicked and clacked as she reset the board, lining up black and white in neat ranks. She always played both sides, white with her left hand, black with her right. It was cleaner that way. People were unpredictable, impatient. But boards? Boards didn't judge. They punished bad choices, yes, but always fairly. "Playing both sides?" a voice asked, not from the usual distance. It came from right across the table. Ina didn't look up. The pawn she held between her fingers didn't move. She felt the air change, though. The way it did when someone tall leaned over a table, casting shadow. "That's ambitious," the voice continued. Male. Older. Crisp, but casual. Not city cop alert, not drug dealer slick. Something else. Something in between. Still, Ina said nothing. She lowered the pawn slowly, completing her setup. The man pulled out the chair opposite her, sat without waiting for permission. Bold. That usually meant trouble. "I haven't played in years," he said. "But muscle memory's a funny thing, like riding a bike or making enemies." She flicked her eyes upward, just briefly. Clean gray hoodie. Khakis that still had the dry cleaner's crease. Watch. Simple, but expensive. Hair silver and neat. A face like a magazine ad for life insurance. He looked like money. The kind of man who didn't walk through this part of Ashland Park unless he'd lost a bet or was chasing nostalgia. "I'll play black," he said, already reaching for the pieces, "unless you've got a system." Ina shrugged. "Go ahead." He raised an eyebrow. "That your first word of the day?" She didn't answer. The game began. Opening was conservative, a king's pawn advance, textbook. She countered instantly, sliding her knight out before he'd even taken his hand off the board. 5 moves in, he paused. "You're fast," he said, like it surprised him. She didn't reply. "Do you play online?" "No Wi-Fi," she said, short, flat, neutral. He leaned back. "School club?" "No school." That earned a nod. Not pity, not shock, just processing. "Are you homeless?" She didn't blink. He raised both hands in mock surrender. "Too direct?" She responded with a subtle lift of her chin, half nod, half dare. 10 moves in, he lost his bishop. 12 in, his queen was boxed into a corner, locked between 2 pawns she hadn't touched until the trap was ready. 6 more moves and she had him in check. 3 after that, it was over. The man exhaled hard, leaning back against the bench. Then a laugh, not bitter but surprised. Well, hell, either I'm rusty or you're something special. Ina started resetting the board. You always out here? He asked. Depends. On what? Who's asking? His laugh this time was sharper, more amused. Walter, he said, extending a hand. Walter Kingsley. She didn't shake it, just glanced at it like it was a question she didn't care to answer. You got a name, or do I have to keep calling you Queen's Gambit? She smirked, a flicker of it anyway, almost gone before it appeared. Ina. He tilted his head. Short for something? Oh, well, Ina. You're terrifying. He gestured at the board. Another? She didn't answer, just placed the pieces again and moved her first pawn. They played 3 more times. He lost each one. By the second, he was sweating. By the third, he stopped talking. When the 4th game ended in silence, he sat still for a long time. Then he stood and stretched. I'm not used to losing, he said. She didn't look at him. Would you come play at my house? He asked suddenly. It made her freeze. I'm not, she started, but stopped. That old reflex. Don't give away too much. Don't let anyone own your next move. Walter Kingsley pulled a card from his wallet and placed it on the board. It was thick, black, with silver lettering. No strings, he said. Just good lighting, a real board, and maybe a sandwich or 2. If that's not breaking protocol. She stared at the card, then back at him. I don't stay places, she said. I'm not asking you to, just stop by. 1 game. And if I say no, then I walk away, he said simply. But I'll spend the rest of the week wondering how many people I've passed by without knowing they could destroy me in under 20 moves. Ina stared at him long enough for the silence to turn heavy. Then she said, You play okay for someone rich. That smile again. I'll take that as a compliment. He turned to leave, but before he did, he added, Don't wait too long, Ina. The game always moves forward. And just like that, he was gone, his steps fading along the gravel path, the wind lifting the corner of the card he'd left behind. She didn't touch it. Not yet. Walter Kingsley wasn't used to being surprised, not in years, not since venture deals stopped lighting a fire in his gut and board meetings became little more than calendar noise. He'd made his fortune 2 decades ago, sold the tech behind smart contracts before the market even understood what they were. After that, everything else was just movement. Fast cars, slow vacations, smiling yes-men, and bottomless glasses of dry wine poured at events he barely remembered attending. But that girl, Ina, she had shut his brain off in 5 moves flat. He wasn't angry, no. It was something else, a kind of thrill he hadn't felt since before Muddy made everything so damn easy. Her eyes weren't pleading or hardened, just still, like water that ran too deep for sound. And her hands, they didn't move. They struck. Each piece was an extension of her. When she moved, it was never random. It was calculated, purposeful, and always 2 layers ahead of what you saw coming. He hadn't told her the truth, of course, about how many Grandmasters he'd actually played with, about how his old mentor, back in Boston, once tried to prep him for the U.S. Open. That was years ago, before algorithms replaced instinct and he started calculating markets instead of night sacrifices. Ina hadn't just beaten him, she'd made him look amateur. That wasn't just raw talent. That was something else, something diamond-cut and untrained, wild brilliance. He stepped off the park path, brushing gravel from his soles as he reached the curb. His driver, Charles, leaned against the hood of the sleek black Lincoln, sipping coffee from a paper cup and scrolling his phone like he didn't have a billionaire waiting for a ride. Walter didn't mind. Charles had been with him long enough to know there wasn't much urgency in his movements these days. "Back early," Charles said, straightening up. "Change of plans," Walter replied. "Take me home." Charles opened the back door, but Walter didn't slide in immediately. He looked back toward the park. The table was still visible in the distance. Inna hadn't moved. She was playing herself again, one hand white, one hand black. Something about it stopped him cold. She played with the same focus whether someone was watching or not, as if every match mattered, even if no one ever saw it. And maybe that was the whole point. He climbed into the back seat without another word. Back at the Kingsley estate, if it could still be called that, the housekeeper had already drawn the curtains open wide and brewed his second round of coffee. His estate wasn't some sprawling castle on a hill, but it wasn't modest either. 5 bedrooms, a greenhouse he never used, and a garage that housed 2 cars he didn't drive. The study was his real sanctuary. Books lined the walls. Real books, not decorative ones. Volumes on economics, theory, psychology, and chess. Plenty of chess. Some with annotated diagrams, others falling apart at the spine from years of flipping. On one side sat a custom-built rosewood chess table with hand-carved pieces imported from Budapest. He hadn't touched it in months. He reached for the black queen now, rolling it between his fingers, then setting it down in its square. His fingers paused at the edge. Something wasn't right. She had embarrassed him. But more than that, she had shown him something he thought he'd lost. Hunger. That edge. That quiet tension that told you were in a game that actually mattered. She couldn't be more than 13. 14, maybe. No records. No school mention. No online data. He would have heard about her by now. Which meant she was invisible. The kind of genius that slipped through the cracks because the world never knew where to look. He left the study and moved through the hall, past the dining room with its silent crystal chandelier and the kitchen with counters too clean to be real. His fingers tapped the folded card still in his pocket. He'd left one with her, yes, but he had more. Back in the study, he picked up the phone. "Charles," he said, "get me a contact at the Riverton Youth Center and do a quiet sweep on a girl named Inna Sterling. No full inquiry, just soft feelers. I want to know who she is, where she sleeps, if she's in danger." "You think she's in trouble?" Charles asked from the other end, cautious. "I think the world is always trouble for people like her," Walter said quietly. "And I'm not sure she's got anyone in her corner." He hung up. Inna, meanwhile, sat cross-legged on the stone bench at Ashland Park, the sun tilting slightly higher now, making her blink behind her hoodie. She'd replayed their last match 3 times already, not because she was unsure of the outcome, she never forgot her games, but because there was something odd about how he'd reacted. Most men who got beaten by a kid, especially a black girl with holes in her socks, didn't stick around for 4 games, and they sure didn't leave behind a card with their name engraved on it, like a key to some secret room. She hadn't touched the card until he was fully out of view. Then she'd picked it up, turned it over, studied the weight of it. Walter Kingsley. She'd heard the name, maybe in the newspaper in the library lobby, or during one of those business shows they let run muted on TVs and shop windows. She couldn't tell if he was kind or just curious. People with money always had an angle. Inna had learned that early. How kindness often came with fine print. Offers with expiration dates. Smiles with strings. But she'd also learned to read people, and Walter's eyes didn't lie when she beat him. He didn't look insulted. He looked excited. A little stunned. Maybe even impressed. That didn't make him safe, but it made him interesting. Her fingers traced the edge of the card again before tucking it deep into her coat lining, right next to the only photo she had of her mom. A creased, curled-edge snapshot from a booth, both of them wearing matching foam crowns and orange slushy stain. By the time noon rolled around, she'd finished 2 more solo matches, eaten a half-smashed granola bar, and stretched out her legs under the table. Her limbs ached from sleeping on concrete. Her right shoulder was stiff from curling around her pack at night. She thought about what Walter said. One game. Just one. She wouldn't stay. She didn't stay anywhere. But maybe, for the first time in a long time, she could walk into something rather than always walking away. Still, she wasn't about to make it easy. Because even off the board, Inna Sterling played for keeps. Walter Kingsley heard the chime before he saw her. The estate's front gate buzzed quietly, almost politely, as the camera feed blinked to life on the small screen in his study. There she was. Same hoodie. Same backpack patched with duct tape and safety pins. Her arms were crossed, her stance guarded, as if the iron bars were the line between reality and something she couldn't afford to believe in. He didn't rush. He knew better than to greet a fox like a hound. Instead, he pressed the intercom and said evenly, "You came." Static crackled, followed by silence. Then her voice. "Palm game." "Fair enough," he said. "Come on in." Buzzed the gate and stood slowly, smoothing the creases in his shirt. This wasn't a business deal, and he wasn't about to treat it like one. She wasn't someone to be impressed with glass and marble. She was all instinct and memory, and any attempt to dazzle her would backfire. By the time he reached the front door, Inna was already halfway up the walkway, eyes scanning everything. She moved like someone who never walked anywhere without thinking 2 steps ahead, shoulders hunched, feet light, always ready to pivot. The bag over her shoulder clinked faintly. Chess pieces. She didn't trust his. He admired that. "Nice walk?" he asked as he opened the door. "Not really," she said, stepping past him. She didn't bother looking up at the chandelier or the polished floors or the framed art. Instead, she moved with mechanical precision, eyes flicking across the walls, the corners, the ceiling fixtures, like she was checking for traps or exits. She didn't take off her backpack, didn't ask for water, didn't compliment the house. Walter gestured toward the hallway. "Studies this way." Inna followed without a word. When they entered, her eyes caught the chess table first. Solid rosewood, carved by hand, the board inlaid with ivory and obsidian squares. The pieces were already set, regal, heavy, smooth as silk. She stood still for a moment, then walked over and picked up a knight, turned it between her fingers, set it back down. "You know this is worth more than what most shelters bring in all year." Walter leaned on the edge of his desk. "And yet, you're still going to beat me using it." She blinked once, maybe a trace of amusement behind her eyes. Maybe not. "I play white," she said. "Be my guest." And she said. He sat across from her, hands folded. For a moment, neither of them moved. The silence stretched, not awkward, but taut, like the pull before a bowstring is released. Then she moved her pawn. Walter mirrored. She followed with her knight. They were dancing again. This time he came in with a different opening, more aggressive, a Sicilian defense, bent sharp at the sides, meant to force an early mistake. She didn't flinch. Her eyes didn't lift from the board once. She didn't bother fidgeting with her hoodie or shifting in her seat. She was locked in, stone still and ruthless. 5 minutes in, he realized she wasn't responding to his aggression. She was absorbing it. The room felt smaller with each move. The light through the windows shifted slowly, casting long shadows across the glossy floor. Somewhere in the house, the soft tick of a grandfather clock counted the seconds like a heartbeat. Walter lost his bishop in a move he didn't even see coming. A quiet sacrifice, intentional. Her pawn had baited him forward, exposing his flank. When he reached to move his queen out of danger, she was already watching the square she knew he'd pick. He paused. "You always this quiet when you play?" Ina shrugged. "Chess isn't about talking. As if you're bad at it. Then you must talk a lot." He laughed, startled. Not just at the jab, but the fact that she gave one. A sliver of something shifted in the air. She wasn't just playing anymore. She was testing him. By move 24, his queen was cornered, his center collapsed, and he had no way to push without exposing everything. He sat back in his chair, studying the board like it owed him an apology. She didn't press for checkmate. She let him see it himself. "Say it," she said. He smiled. "Checkmate." Ina didn't gloat. She just reached for her backpack, unzipped a pouch, and pulled out a sandwich wrapped in wax paper. Peanut butter and something red. She took a bite. "You bring your own?" he asked. "Yeah," she said through a mouthful. "I don't eat mystery food." "I have staph," he said. "It's not poisoned." "That's what everyone says." She chewed, swallowed. "Nice board," she added, finally. "Do you want it?" he asked, half joking. She looked at him flatly. "You offering? I don't think I've earned that loss yet." "Then keep playing." So he did. They played again, and again. By the third game, she'd loosened her hoodie, revealing a braid looped tightly down her back. By the fourth, she'd removed her bag and set it beside her on the floor. Her posture stayed cautious, but her focus never wavered. Even when he offered tea, black, no sugar, she only took a few sips, holding the cup with both hands like she expected it to vanish. Between matches, she said almost nothing. But Walter talked, just enough to fill the room. He told her about his grandfather, who taught him chess before he could spell his own name, about the first tournament he entered and how badly he lost, about the game that almost cost him $1 million contract because he missed a call he didn't want to answer anyway. She listened. Not with fake nods or wide eyes, but with that same steady stillness. Finally, she asked, "Why me?" The question came with no warning. Walter paused, fingers halfway to his knight. Basically, "Why not you?" "That's not an answer." "No, it's not," he admitted. "You embarrassed me. That's not easy to do. Then you did it again. And again. I figured if someone's going to knock me on my ass 4 times in a row, I should at least learn her name." "You don't owe me anything," she said. "If that's what this is." It's the... She stared at the board. "I don't want saving. I'm not trying to save you, Ina. I'm just asking you to play." The silence came again, different now. Softer. She reached for the pawn and set the pieces once more. Walter sat back, his breath slow. He wasn't teaching her. He was witnessing her, and that, he realized, was better than anything he'd done with all his millions. Even if she never came back again, Ina didn't come back the next day. Walter sat in the study. Same chessboard, same lighting, same cup of black tea that went cold before noon. But the chair across from him stayed empty. He didn't say anything about it to Charles, didn't ask the housekeeper to keep an eye on the security feed. He just waited, silently, deliberately, as if not waiting at all. He'd lived long enough to know you couldn't pull brilliance toward you. You had to leave space for it to return on its own. On the third day she came. No call, no warning, just the soft creak of the gate, the scuff of her worn shoes on the walkway, and a hoodie that looked like it had been through one rainstorm too many. She didn't say hello, didn't explain where she'd been. She just walked into the study, nodded once at the board, and sat. "You hungry?" Walter asked, already moving toward the hallway. "Ussin'? I ate?" She lied. He left anyway, came back 5 minutes later with a sandwich and a steaming bowl of soup. No questions, no speeches, just placed it beside her like a bishop in mid-game and sat back down. She stared at it for a full minute, before taking the spoon. They didn't speak until the board was cleared and reset. "I couldn't come yesterday," she muttered as he reached for a pawn. "You don't owe me an explanation." "I wasn't offering one." That flicker of defiance, sharp as a knight's jump. Volta smiled. "You play black today?" Ina nodded, reaching forward. The game began. But something in her rhythm had shifted. Her moves were still fast, still clean, but less automatic. A beat slower. Her eyes flicked to the side more than usual. She wasn't just tracking the board. She was distracted, even if she tried to bury it. Walter noticed. He didn't ask. He adjusted, made moves to stretch the game, let her breathe. Not because he pitied her, but because chess was a language, and right now, she was speaking in broken phrases. She made a rare mistake in the mid-game, exposing her queen too early, and winced when he capitalized on it. He moved his rook in place, pausing once before capturing. "You're off today," he said gently. "I'm fine." "You're not. You're fast, but you're not focused." She shot him a glare, then dropped her gaze to the board again. He waited. Eventually, she said, "Someone took my tarp, the one I sleep under." Walter didn't move, didn't speak. "And my backpack, not this one," she added quickly, touching the faded red bag beside her. "The other one. Had my clothes, my book, my mom's scarf." Stillness. She didn't say anything else, just stared at her pawns like they might have an answer. He let the silence stretch. "Where'd it happen?" She shrugged. "Old church downtown. I left it behind the brick steps like I always do. When I came back, gone." Walter leaned back slowly. "You reported it?" She gave him a look that could cut glass. "To who? A cop?" "Fair point." She moved her bishop. Careless. A mistake. Again. He didn't take advantage this time. "You can keep some things here, you know," he offered. "If you want." "I don't want." "Okay. I don't need." She stopped, jaw tightening. "I don't stay in places. That's not how this works." Turning a bit immediately. "I'm not asking you to stay. I'm offering a place to breathe." She didn't answer. The game ended quickly, her second loss in 4 visits. She reset the pieces but didn't ask for a rematch. Instead, she asked, "What did you used to do?" Walter raised a brow. "You mean before I got beat by a teenager every other morning?" Her lips curled. Not quite a smile, but close. "I was in software," he said. "Built a few tools, sold them, did well. That why this place looks like it belongs in a movie?" He chuckled. "Something like that. And now you just sit in here and play chess?" "Only when I'm lucky." Ina looked at the table, then around the room. Her gaze landed on a photograph near the bookshelf. Walter, much younger, standing beside a woman with soft eyes and a tired smile. They were in front of a conference stage. He had a microphone in hand. "Your wife?" she asked. "No. Business partner. Sheila. She passed a few years ago." Ina nodded once, the way someone does when they understand grief intimately and don't need details. "You lonely?" she asked, blunt as ever. He didn't flinch. "Sometimes. Must be weird. Big house, nobody in it." "Sometimes quiet is just quiet. Other times it's too loud." It made her look up again. They sat in stillness for a while. Then she stood. "I gotta go." Walter stood too. "Same time tomorrow?" She shrugged. "Maybe." As she reached for her bag, he said, "Ina." She paused, one strap over her shoulder. "If you want. I can help find your mom's scarf. Just need a few details." She didn't answer, but she didn't say no. She walked out without another word, disappearing into the daylight like fog off a window pane. But as the front door clicked shut, Walter looked back at the board. The Black King was still standing, alone. He reached down and gently laid it on its side. Inna sat under the rusted overhang of an abandoned bus stop 2 blocks from Ashland Park, her knees pulled to her chest and her hoodie drawn low over her eyes. A trash fire crackled in a barrel nearby, fed by damp newspapers and someone's discarded tax forms. She watched the flames curl around the edges of her receipt and wondered if it once belonged to someone who had everything. Someone who'd walked into a store, handed over a card, and walked out without counting change. She didn't remember what that felt like. Her stomach made a low, hollow noise. It was the sound of her body reminding her it didn't care how smart she was or how many moves ahead she could think. It only cared about calories. She reached into her backpack, fished out half of a granola bar wrapped in a napkin, and took a small bite. Crumbly, dry, but better than nothing. A few feet away, a man named Jerome shuffled his cards, muttering to himself. "You still playing with ghosts, old man?" she said without looking up. Jerome didn't miss a beat. "Ghosts play cleaner than people." They both chuckled. "Just a little." Inna liked Jerome. He'd been around as long as she'd been drifting, maybe longer. He was part scavenger, part street preacher, part philosopher. Always talking to spirits, always wearing 3 coats, even in spring. People thought he was crazy. She thought he was the only honest one left. He tapped his finger against the bench. "You don't belong out here, girl." "Says who?" "Says me. You carry too many questions in your eyes. People like that get eaten." "I don't get eaten, I eat." Jerome chuckled again, raspy and warm. "And what if the meal looks like you?" Inna didn't respond. She chewed slowly and stared at the soot-lined sidewalk. The night was heavy, no sirens, just wind and the occasional bark of a dog far off behind a fence. The kind of quiet that didn't soothe. It pressed. She thought about Walter. She'd told herself she wouldn't go back. Not after yesterday, not after how she let her guard down. Talking about the scarf had pulled something loose in her. Something she didn't like to show. But there was something about him. He didn't look at her like she was broken. He didn't pity her, didn't try to fix her. He just showed up. Made space. That was rare. She reached into the front pocket of her hoodie and pulled out the photo. Her and her mom, maybe 8 years ago. The booth picture from that corner fair they stumbled across when the train let them off at the wrong stop. Her mom had insisted on it. "Something to prove we were here," she'd said. It was the last picture they ever took together. Her mom's name was Darlene. Her laugh was sharp, loud, the kind that filled a room and embarrassed waiters. She used to call in a little hurricane, said she blew through people's assumptions like storm wind. Then one night, she didn't come back. That was 2 years ago. Inna waited 3 days at the shelter. Staff said they hadn't seen her. Cop said, "We'll keep an eye out." But Inna knew what that meant. No one was coming. So she stopped waiting. She packed what little she had, started moving. One bus stop to the next, one meal at a time, one quiet table in the park, where no one asked where she lived, or why her socks never matched. That's when chess became more than a habit. It became structure, control. If life was chaos, the board was order. If the world was unfair, the board was honest. No lies, no disguises, just moves. And now there was Walter, a piece she hadn't expected on her board. He wasn't a rescuer, he wasn't a threat, he was something else. A mirror? Maybe a test? She didn't trust it, not fully, but she felt it, the pull. She tucked the photo away, stood and nodded at Jerome. "Keep talking to those ghosts. They keep talking back," he said without looking up. As she walked toward the dark edge of the block, she adjusted her hoodie, tightened her grip on the backpack, and disappeared into the shadow between streetlights. By morning, she was back in the park. Walter wasn't there yet. That was fine. She set up the board anyway, brushing leaves off the stone table and lining the pieces one by one. This time she didn't play both sides, she just let them sit, like they were waiting too. When he finally arrived, he looked tired but amused. "Was starting to think you ghosted me," he said, easing onto the bench. "Didn't know we had rules," she replied. "We don't. But I missed losing." She almost smiled. Almost. He looked at the board, then at her. "You set it up like you were waiting." "I was." They started the game, but this time the silence didn't stretch as long. "I used to live in Louisville," she said, midway through the opening. Walter paused, studying her knight. "Long way from here?" "Not far enough." She slid her pawn forward, sacrificing it to open her diagonal. "My mom was loud," she added, "but she always said I was born to think in straight lines." Walter raised a brow. "You don't play like straight lines. You play like thunder." "She taught me to play, sort of. She'd move pieces and hum songs. I had to guess the move before she made it. That's genius." He just didn't like silence. The conversation flowed, uneven but real. She didn't say everything. He didn't push. They just let the truth drip out between moves like water from a cracked faucet. Midway through the match, Walter leaned back. "You ever think about playing officially?" "No papers," she said quickly. "No ID, no school. I'm not on anyone's list." "We could fix that." She looked at him hard. "Don't say things you don't mean." "I don't." She studied him for a long second. "You really think a girl like me could show up to some fancy tournament, no history, no past, and win?" "I don't think it," Walter said. "I know it." She blinked. He continued. "But it's not just about winning, it's about being seen." She nodded slowly, then looked down at the board. Checkmate. But neither of them moved. They just sat there, queen still standing, king boxed in, both of them staring at something deeper than wood and strategy. Like maybe this game, this moment, was about more than who won. Maybe finally the pieces off the board mattered too. Inna hadn't touched the sandwich Walter left on the side table. She'd stared at it for almost 20 minutes. Turkey and cheese, wrapped in wax paper like it was something sacred. Maybe to him it was. To her, it was a test. She didn't trust gifts, especially not ones that came from clean hands and quiet voices. Gifts had strings. Strings pulled when you got too comfortable, too close, too foolish. So she left it untouched, even though her stomach clawed at itself in protest. Walter didn't say anything, just watched the board, eyes steady, like he was letting the pieces speak. "You don't ask a lot of questions," she said finally, breaking the silence. "I ask the ones that matter," he replied, moving his rook. She nodded, a quiet kind of acknowledgement, then made her own move. Bishop angled hard, slicing through his defenses. "You're better when you're mad," he noted. "I'm always mad," she said, her voice dry. "Some of us don't have the luxury of taking days off from it." He leaned back. "That why you didn't come yesterday?" "I was moving. Again." He tilted his head. "Where to?" She narrowed her eyes. "You gonna follow me?" "No. I just want to know if you're safe." She snorted. "What does safe even mean?" Walter didn't answer. They played the rest of the match in silence. When it ended, her win again, she stood up and grabbed her bag, slinging it over her shoulder like armor. The chessboard remained set, untouched. The sandwich still sat on the side table, edges curling slightly. "You ever been in a car with heated seats?" Walter asked suddenly. She stopped in the doorway. "What?" "I'm serious," he said. "You ever been in a car with real leather, seat warmers, GPS that tells you where traffic is before it happens?" She eyed him suspiciously. "You offering a ride or a sales pitch?" "Neither," he said. "I'm offering something else, a different game. I'm not playing anything off that board." "It's not a trick," he said calmly. "It's an invitation. A real one. Just 1 week. You stay in the guest house, come and go as you please, eat when you want, play when you want." Her face gave nothing away. "You said you don't stay places," he continued. "I get that. I'm not asking you to stay. I'm asking you to try." She stared at him like she was trying to find the catch. "Hey," she asked flatly. "Why me?" Walter took a deep breath. "Because you remind me of someone I used to know, and because the world's already tried to erase you once. I'd like to give you a place where your name doesn't get lost." That hung in the air. He didn't move closer, didn't press. Eventually, she replied, "I don't make promises. Neither do I." The ride was silent at first. Charles adjusted the temperature in the car without being asked, then flicked on the seat warmer for the passenger side. Ina didn't say thank you, just curled her fingers around the edge of the seat, like it might vanish beneath her at any second. She looked out the window at the world she usually passed on foot. Faster, cleaner, more distant behind the tinted glass. She didn't trust any of it. Walter rode in the back, unusually quiet. Maybe he knew not to speak. Maybe he understood that comfort wasn't earned with soft music and leather interiors. It was earned slowly, piece by piece. When they pulled through the long curved driveway, Ina leaned forward, eyes scanning every corner of the property like she was planning an escape route. The house rose behind iron gates and hedges trimmed so precisely it made her teeth ache. Beyond it, a smaller building sat tucked beneath a canopy of trees. The guest house. She stepped out slowly, backpack still clutched to her chest. "I can show you around," Walter offered. "I'll find my way," she said. They walked the path to the guest house in silence. Walter handed her a key and pointed to a small keypad on the door. "Code's your choice. Pick something easy to remember." She didn't respond, just walked in. It was simple. A small kitchen, a couch, a narrow bed with folded linens, a door that led to a bathroom so clean it looked unused. There was a mini fridge stocked with bottled water and granola bars. A folded piece of paper on the counter read, "No rules, just options." People www. She dropped her bag at the foot of the bed and stood in the middle of the room. It felt wrong to be indoors this long without someone yelling or asking for ID. It felt too still. She wandered to the closet. Empty hangers. A folded robe. Slippers still in plastic. She closed the door. Her fingers itched. Too much space. Too much softness. She opened the window to let in air, then sat on the bed and waited for the panic to pass. By the third day, she had found a rhythm. She played chess in the mornings, alone or with Walter, and wandered the estate in the afternoons. She avoided the main house, but she liked the greenhouse. She didn't care about the plants, but it smelled like summer in there, wet dirt and warmth. And no one followed her. No one asked questions. On the 5th night, she found the library. It wasn't big, just a small room off the hallway behind the guest house. She pushed open the door and froze. Wall-to-wall books, floor cushions, a reading lamp shaped like a rook. She stood in the doorway for 5 minutes before stepping inside. The first book she pulled was My System by Aaron Nimzowitsch. Heavy, dense, full of diagrams. She sat on the floor and opened it, carefully, like it might fall apart. Time passed differently in there. Hours folded into each other. She forgot to be afraid, until she heard a knock. Walter. He didn't come in, just stood in the doorway with a cup of tea. "You're not a visitor anymore," he said gently. "You're here." She nodded, but deep down, part of her still didn't believe it, as the world didn't give things away for free. And 1 week was too good to trust. Ina woke up, without panic, for the first time in months. The light through the guesthouse window hit her eyes like a slow hello instead of an alarm bell. No street noise, no shouting, just the rustle of leaves, the creak of a branch in the breeze, and the faint scent of cedar from the windowsill. It felt like a dream she wasn't sure she belonged in. What favor had the guesthouse posed her in cedar, such that she sat up slowly, not fully trusting the comfort. Her feet hit the soft rug on the floor, and she braced herself for a noise. Someone pounding on the door, demanding she leave. But nothing came. Just quiet. She moved through the morning like someone walking on thin ice. Brushed her teeth with a new toothbrush from a basket she hadn't touched. Ate a banana from the small fruit bowl, peeled slow, each bite tentative. She didn't take off her hoodie. Not yet. Across the yard she saw Walter, already in the study through the large window, pacing, slow, holding a cup of tea like it was something sacred. She watched him from behind a tree for a second before walking the path toward him, her hands tucked into the sleeves of her coat, like she was still holding everything in. The door to the study creaked softly as she entered. Walter turned but didn't say anything, just gave a small nod, then gestured toward the chessboard already set up. "You slept?" he asked, after she sat down. "Enough," she said. She picked up her knight and held it in her fingers, felt the weight of it. This set wasn't plastic. These pieces had stories. Probably handmade. Probably worth more than everything she'd ever owned combined. He moved it. Walter mirrored. The match began. "You ever think about what you'd do if you weren't out here?" he asked casually, halfway through the opening. "Out here where?" "In this life. Out in the city. Surviving." She shrugged, sliding a pawn up 2 spaces. "Doesn't matter what I think. That's not how this works." "But what if it did?" She studied him carefully. "I used to think I'd be a lawyer. Saw this woman once on TV. She wore red heels and never blinked. Said what she wanted and made people listen. I thought, maybe I could do that. Make people shut up and hear me." Walter smiled. "I can see that." "Then my mom disappeared, and people stopped listening, and I stopped talking." He nodded slowly, understanding without pressing. The game turned sharp then, her bishop catching him off guard. He chuckled as he moved to defend. "You ever enter a tournament?" she asked suddenly. "A few. Back when I had more hair." "Did you win?" "No. Got crushed. But I learned." She studied him again, then said, "I want to play in one." Walter's hands froze above the rook. "Yeah?" She nodded. "Not for the trophy, just to prove it." "Prove what?" "That people like me belong there." His face softened. "I thought you didn't care what people think," he said. "I don't," she replied, "but sometimes it's good to let them watch while you take the whole board." Walter sat back, considering. "There's one next month, big one. Downtown Riverton. Regional juniors, lots of cameras, fancy hotel lobby. But it needs ID, registration, real paperwork." "No," she said. "I can help with that." Quietly. Anna didn't speak. He kept going. "We don't have to make a scene. We just enter you under a different name. Nobody needs to know where you're from. All they'll know is how fast they lost." She looked down at the board, fingers twitching. "Won't people notice?" she asked. "A random kid shows up out of nowhere and starts wrecking seniors?" "They'll notice," he said, "but not until it's too late." Her lips curled, that smirk again, barely there, but honest. The game ended with a draw, the first time either of them had pulled even. She stood slowly, stretching her back. Walter watched her. "You trust me?" "No," she said, "but I trust the board. And it says you're playing fair." He chuckled. "Good enough." That afternoon, Walter handed her a laptop and told her to look up the tournament. She sat on the couch in the guest house, scrolling through page after page of profiles and pictures. Kids in matching polos, arms crossed like little generals, names she didn't recognize, coaches listed beside them, sponsors. She didn't have any of that, just herself. She searched YouTube for past games, watched matches play out with cold commentary and flashing timers. She watched every one of them twice, then again in slow motion. Her eyes absorbed every mistake, every hesitation. She wrote things down in a small notebook. Patterns, traps, timing. Every night that week, she practiced until the lamp flickered. Walter checked on her once, peeking through the guesthouse window around midnight. She didn't notice him. She was too busy breaking down a Grandmaster's opening sequence with a piece of chalk on the floor. She was building a war map. The day Walter brought her a tailored gray hoodie with a small embroidered knight on the sleeve, she didn't know what to say. "For the tournament," he said. She frowned. "I have a hoodie." "I know. But this one fits. And it doesn't have holes." She took it, held it like something fragile, then set it beside her bag without speaking. He didn't mention it again. Later that night, she wore it while studying. He noticed. He said nothing. On the 7th day, she beat him in 11 moves. Walter leaned back, hands in the air. "That was brutal." She shrugged. "You walked right into it." "I know. Still hurts, though." "But..." She reached for the pieces, started setting them up again. "You sure you're ready for this?" he asked, half serious. "I was born ready." He smiled, then asked, "You want a fake name?" She nodded once. "Yeah. What should we call you?" She thought for a moment, then with calm certainty said, "Sir Dick Knight." Walter's eyebrows lifted. "Nice. Dramatic? Symbolic?" He didn't explain it. He didn't ask. The name wasn't for the audience. It was for her. Because now she wasn't just a pawn moving from one square to the next. She was playing as a knight. And this time, she had room to leap. The Riverton Grand Youth Open looked nothing like it expected. It wasn't in a dark, dusty gym with flickering lights or scratched-up plastic tables. It was in a 5-star hotel lobby with ceilings so high you could lose your voice shouting to the top. The carpet was soft, blue, and patterned with shapes that looked like rooks and crowns if you squinted. Everything smelled like lemon polish and air freshener. The kids were already milling around in matching team hoodies, embroidered with club names and sponsors. Some had wheeled cases with velvet-lined boards. Others whispered strategies with parents in tailored suits. Every one of them looked like they belonged. Inna didn't. She stood near the glass doors for a full minute, gripping the strap of her backpack with one hand and her registration card with the other. Sterling Knight. That was her name today, printed in bold letters. No ID needed. Walter had taken care of that. She didn't ask how. Walter stood just behind her, sipping coffee like he didn't have a care in the world. He'd walked her through the entry process earlier that morning in the car. Now he just let her breathe. "You want me to go in first?" he asked. Inna shook her head. "No, I'm not hiding." She took a deep breath, squared her shoulders, and walked through the crowd. Heads turned, not because they knew who she was, but because she wasn't in uniform. Her hoodie was gray, no school name on the back, and her face was unfamiliar. That meant one thing to people in this room: an easy win. She moved straight to the table marked Check-in, Group C, handed over her card, and said nothing as the volunteer scanned it. "Sterling Knight," the man said, checking the roster. "New player?" "Ugh. You're in the Juniors Open bracket, Board 7. First match starts in 15. She nodded once and turned to go. No smile, no small talk. She didn't come to make friends. And board 7, she unpacked her own pieces. Cheap plastic. Same scuffed ones from the park. She set them out quietly while others watched with raised brows and half-hidden smirks. One kid leaned over to whisper something to his coach. She caught the words street player and filler seed. She didn't blink. Her opponent arrived late, a tall boy with sandy hair and braces that flashed when he laughed. He plopped into the seat like it was a video game lounge, not a competition. "You Sterling?" he asked, already moving his hand toward the clock. She nodded. "You play much?" he grinned. "No." "You'll learn quick." He pressed the clock. She moved her pawn. By move 10, his smirk was gone. By move 15, he was fidgeting. By move 23, he was sweating. By move 27, it was over. She sat still while the judge walked by, glanced at the board, and marked the result. Winner, knight. Her opponent sat stunned, blinking like the board had betrayed him. Hina packed up her pieces, slid them back into her drawstring bag, and stood. No fist pump, no noise. Just another game. She stepped out of the room and walked toward the hallway where Walter leaned against the wall, reading something on his phone. He looked up, raised one eyebrow. "Win?" She nodded. "How fast?" 27 moves. He gave a low whistle. "You're being polite." She shrugged. Didn't want to scare them too early. He grinned. "Next match in an hour," she said, glancing at the posted schedule. "You want food, water, good. You want space." She hesitated, then nodded. Walter stepped aside and pointed down the hallway. "Third door on the left, quiet lounge. You'll find you're calm." She walked off, without another word. In the lounge, she found an empty armchair by the window. The city below looked like a tilted chessboard. Cars lined in rows, people moving through crosswalks like pieces with paths they couldn't control. She stared out and thought of the park, the cracked bench, the first time she met Walter. Then she pulled out her notebook, not to write, just to touch it, a reminder of how far she'd come. The second match was harder. A girl from a prep school in Vermont, hair in a tight braid, glasses that looked sharper than her tone. She opened with a queen's gambit, fast, aggressive, rehearsed. Hina didn't blink. She adjusted, countered, waited for the moment the pattern cracked. It came on move 18. Hina slipped a pawn forward that most wouldn't dare touch. It looked like a mistake. That's why it worked. 5 moves later, the girl's defenses collapsed like a crumbling wall. Checkmate in 30. The girl stood up quickly, flustered, and knocked her water bottle off the table. It rolled and clattered. All eyes turned. Hina didn't move. She watched the board until the judge confirmed the win. Walter was waiting by the corner when she came out. 2 for 2, he said. "You want me to tell you I'm not surprised? I want you to stop smiling like you built me." "I didn't build you," he said, "but I'm proud to stand on the same floor." She looked at him. No words, just a nod. Match 3, match 4, match 5, same result. Different faces, different openings, but the same ending. By the 6th round, whispers followed her into the room. Who is she? Where'd she come from? Is she ranked? Does she even have a coach? She heard them all. Didn't answer any. She let her game speak, and it was loud. By the time the final match came around, the organizers had bumped her to a center table. Spotlights above, spectators allowed to stand behind the ropes, cameras out. Not streaming, just curious parents with cell phones, ready to catch the next prodigy. Her final opponent was ranked, a boy with slicked-back hair and a reputation for trash talk. He'd won state-level tournaments and played overseas. His jacket said Team Redwood in bold gold letters. He sat down and offered his hand. "May the best player win," he said. She "Ill will," she replied. The match drew a crowd. Walter stood near the back, arms crossed, letting it happen, letting her shine. 38 moves. That's how long it took. The boy fought hard, played smart, but he didn't play like someone who'd spent nights mapping out victories on floors with chalk and broken clocks. She won, not by luck, not by surprise, by strategy, by tower. When the judge raised her hand to announce the winner, Ina didn't flinch. Someone clapped, then another, then the whole room. Sterling Knight had entered the board, and she was here to stay. Ina didn't sleep that night, not because she was scared, not because she was restless, but because her name, Sterling Knight, was suddenly everywhere. She'd meant to disappear after the tournament, just walk back out of the hotel lobby and vanish into the street like fog. But then someone posted a clip. 38 moves in 4 minutes, her fingers flying across the board, her opponent sweating through his designer team jacket. The video caught the exact moment the crowd clapped, the exact moment the judge called her name. It went viral. A girl with no rank, no club, no coach, winning against top-tier players like it was just another Tuesday. Someone captioned it, "Who is Sterling Knight?" That was the beginning of the trouble. By morning, the video had over 200,000 views. A chess blogger wrote a piece titled "Mysterious Underdog Destroys Riverton Youth Open." Then the local news called Walter. Then the National Chess Association. Then the sponsors. All asking the same thing. Where did this girl come from? Walter tried to control the story. He reached out to contacts quietly, asked them to ease the pressure, let things simmer. But nothing stays small once the internet decides to crown a champion. Ina wasn't ready. She was still curled up in the corner of the guest house couch, hoodie over her head, arms folded tight, when Walter knocked on the door with the morning paper in his hand. She didn't answer. He let himself in. She didn't look at him, just mumbled, "I didn't want this." "I know," he said, setting the paper on the coffee table. She glanced at it. Her picture, blurry and mid-mote, was splashed across the front page of the local arts section. Her name beneath it, Sterling Knight, the mystery mastermind. "I wanted to win," she muttered. "That's it, not this." "You didn't ask for attention," Walter said. "You earned it." "I don't want it. You don't have to keep it." She sat up slowly, rubbed her eyes. "Can't we take it down?" "Too late," he said gently. "Once a story catches, it spreads. The only thing we can do now is shape it." She didn't respond. He sat beside her, leaving space. "They want an interview," he said. "You don't have to talk about your past. You don't even have to give your real name." "I already didn't." "Name. I mean, the name behind the name. They want to know who you are, what makes you tick." "They want to turn me into something," she snapped. "Something I'm not. They want to sell a story." Walter didn't deny it. "Then why let them?" she asked. He looked down at his hands. "Because sometimes the world opens a door, and if you don't walk through it, it'll close. Forever." She leaned forward, elbows on knees, eyes low. "My mom used to say, when something feels too good, it's probably a trap." I think he was smart. He was scared. Maybe she had a reason. They both sat in silence for a moment. Then Walter said, "Do you want to keep playing?" She blinked. "What?" "Chess. Tournaments. Bigger ones. Maybe travel. Maybe even the nationals. They'll ask questions, sure. But if you want it, we'll find a way." She looked at him. "Even with no ID? No papers? No birth certificate?" "We'll figure it out." Her voice softened. "You don't know how broken my trail is. I've changed shelters 10 times. I'm not in any school system. I've been off the grid since I was 11. That's not just a missing piece, that's a whole puzzle gone. Walter leaned forward. Then let's rebuild it, one piece at a time. She wanted to believe him, but believing in anything came with risk. That night, she walked alone to the edge of Ashland Park. The same cracked bench, the same board, etched into stone. She sat with her old plastic pieces and played against the air. But it didn't feel the same anymore. The board was still honest, but the world around it had changed. The next morning, she knocked on Walter's study door. He looked up, surprised. "Thought you might have left." "I don't leave before finishing a game," she said. He smiled. "I'll do it," she added. "The interview. But only if I control the story." "Agreed. I want them to know one thing." "What's that?" "I was never the mystery. The board was. I just learned how to read it." Walter nodded. "That's your headline." They arranged it with a small outlet. Riverton Public Radio. No cameras. Just a microphone and a quiet woman named Clara, with a gentle voice and a notepad full of respectful questions. Ina wore her hoodie. She sat with her hands folded, posture stiff, but voice clear. She told them she learned chess in the park. Told them she'd never had a coach. Told them she didn't care about trophies. "I play," she said into the mic, "because it's the only place the rules don't change when I show up." When it aired, people listened. And no one asked about her birth certificate. No one demanded to know where she slept. They just listened. And for once, Ina's story wasn't about where she came from. It was about what she could become. Walter never liked being the center of attention. Not when he was young and selling software to people in suits, not when he became the name behind a billion-dollar firm, and certainly not now, standing at the back of a library conference hall, while reporters whispered about his prodigy. Ina wasn't even in the room yet, but her name buzzed like a neon sign. A girl with no school records, no tournament history, and no adult to vouch for her, until him. He could feel the shift, the tone in the questions. Curiosity was turning into suspicion. One reporter, short and sharp-tongued, had already asked, "So where exactly did she come from?" Walter had smiled politely, his standard shield. "Same place all geniuses come from. Somewhere nobody thought to look." But he could see the way they were digging now. They wanted facts, credentials, paper trails. The world only liked miracles when it could package them, but they had to tie them onto something. He stood up and the two walked to the window, True reaching it first. Behind them, the window went open. Across town, Ina stood in the guest house bathroom, staring at her reflection. Her hoodie was off, her hair was tied back, and for the first time since that first game in Ashland Park, she looked tired. Not from playing, but from being seen. The interview from last week had gone viral too. People praised her poise, called her a truth-teller, said she had a rare voice. But others started pulling threads. Where were her parents? Why wasn't she in school? Was she really who she said she was? The comments burned through her mind. Another sob story made for headlines. Cute trick, but what's her real name? You can't just show up and win. Doesn't work like that. She hated how much it all echoed what she used to believe herself. She splashed cold water on her face and grabbed her notebook. The edges were curled, the pages filled with diagrams, tactics, and small, angry poems she never let anyone read. She pressed her palm against it and breathed. Then she headed out the door. Walter was waiting in the car, silent. He could tell she wasn't in the mood for chatter. Neither was he. They drove to the library in silence. When they arrived, the crowd was bigger than expected. Not just media. Officials, organizers, even a few players from the regional tournament. There were whispers the state federation might want to review her match records, verify eligibility, whatever that meant. Ina walked in with her head up. People stared. She stared back. The panel began with pleasantries. A few questions about strategy, her favorite opening, her inspirations. She answered politely, even joked once. But then came the question, from a man in a tan suit with glasses too big for his face. If that's the name you're using, why haven't we seen any documentation to support your background? No school registration, no birth record, no official rating. Can you explain that? The room went still. Anna blinked once. Walter tensed. She didn't look away. Instead, she leaned toward the mic and said, "Because I'm not a story you're used to hearing." The man looked thrown. She continued, voice calm but firm. "I don't have a sponsor. I don't have a team. I don't have trophies lined up in a cabinet somewhere. I don't have a dad with a private coach or a mom who pays my entry fees. What I do have is a brain that learned how to think ahead while sleeping on concrete, and a hand steady enough to hold a king even when everything else was falling apart." The crowd was quiet, but not in a bad way. She looked around. "I'm not here because someone picked me. I'm here because I fought to stay here. You can dig all you want. You won't find a file that makes sense to you. You'll just find a girl who shouldn't be here, winning anyway." There was no applause. Just silence, thick enough to stretch across the whole city. Then Walter stood. He walked to the front, took the second mic. "She's right," he said. "She doesn't check your boxes. That's because your boxes are too small." A few people stirred. "She's not just a player. She's a symbol of everyone who got left behind. And if we start punishing that kind of excellence because it doesn't fit our rules, then maybe the rules are broken." That got them. Some nodded. Others whispered. Enos stood still, letting his words wrap around her like armor. Later, outside, she asked him quietly, "Do you think they'll let me keep playing?" Walter didn't answer right away. "I think some of them will try to stop you." She nodded. "Thought so. But it won't matter," he added, "because they're already too late." She looked up. "The world's already seen what you can do. They can't unsee it." She exhaled. Not relief. Something else. Something deeper. "Then let's make sure they see more." Walter smiled. "Now you're talking like a champion." She grinned. "Let's go home," she said. He opened the car door for her, and this time, she didn't look over her shoulder. She didn't check who was watching. She just got in, because some games don't end with checkmate. Some begin there. The snow was already melting when Inna stepped back onto the old stone bench in Ashland Park. Same spot where it all started. Same table, still scarred and weather-worn, the black and white grid faded from years of weather and wear. But this time, she wasn't hunched under a hoodie, afraid someone would ask her to leave. This time she was known, and for the first time in her life, she wasn't hiding. A small crowd gathered slowly, not out of curiosity, but out of respect. People had started to recognize her face. Kids from the neighborhood. A pair of older men who used to shake their heads at her now watched her with awe. One even waved. She waved back. It was still new, being seen. She didn't smile big, but it was there, just a crease at the corner of her mouth, like the beginning of a sunrise. Walter stood off to the side, leaning against a lamppost with a book in his hand he wasn't really reading. He was dressed more casually than usual, just a navy jacket and jeans, but he still had the air of someone who didn't need to say much to be respected. They exchanged a glance, and that was enough. She set up her board, piece by piece. The same cheap plastic set she'd carried in her backpack for years. She had offers now, sponsors willing to send her custom boards, branded gear, but she kept turning them down. This one was hers. These pieces knew her fingers. They'd been there when no one else had. A girl, maybe 8 or 9, hesitantly approached the table. You, um, are you the girl from the tournament? She asked, clutching a library book to her chest. Inna nodded. The girl's eyes widened. Can I play you? Inna looked at her. Tiny hands, nervous eyes, a book with a folded corner. She remembered being that small, looking at the world like it was too far away to reach. Only if you go first, Inna said, gesturing to the white side. The girl sat down like she was afraid the bench would vanish. She made her first move. E4. And Inna smiled faintly. Good choice, she said. They played for 15 minutes. Inna didn't go easy, but she didn't crush her either. She let the girl make mistakes, corrected one silently with a smile, and let her see the trap before it snapped shut. When the game ended, the little girl clapped her hands and bounced in place. That was amazing. Inya gave her a nod. You've got good instincts. Thanks. I learned from my big brother. Well, tell him he's teaching you right. The girl ran off, still buzzing with excitement, and Inna sat back, watching the city move around her. The cold wasn't biting anymore. Spring was creeping in slow, like a shy guest at a party. Birds chirped in distant trees, and the air smelled faintly of damp grass and coffee from the food truck parked nearby. Walter finally approached and took the seat across from her. Wasn't sure you'd come back here, he said. She shrugged. It's still mine. You ever gonna get tired of beating everyone? She smirked. Maybe, but not today. He placed a folded envelope on the table. She looked at it, then up at him. What's this? Your entry papers. Away. The National Youth Invitational in D.C. Ina's eyes narrowed. I didn't apply. I did, on your behalf. You forged my signature. I used your player ID and your notebook. You left it open. Page 6 had your full name in cursive in the corner. Looked intentional. She stared at him. You didn't. I did. He waited for her to yell. She didn't. She opened the envelope slowly, read the confirmation letter, the bracket placement, the official logo from the national board. Is this real? She asked, her voice low. Very. She ran a finger over the letterhead. It felt unreal. Too smooth. They accepted me? You're not a mystery anymore, Inna. You're a competitor, and they've seen what you can do. She looked up at him. This doesn't happen, not to people like me. He nodded. It usually doesn't. But you're not people like you. You're you. She folded the letter carefully and slid it back inside the envelope. Her hands shook a little, not from fear, but from the weight of it all finally catching up. You'll come with me? She asked. If you want me there. She hesitated, then nodded. I want you there. He leaned back, smiling. Then it's settled. First class or train? She raised an eyebrow. Train. I want to see everything between here and there. Walter chuckled. I thought you might say that. They sat in silence for a moment, the chessboard between them untouched. Then Inna reached into her bag and pulled out the old photo of her and her mom, the one from the fair, the one she kept tucked away, folded soft from the years. She set it on the table. Walter looked at it, then at her. She used to say, Inna whispered, that I moved like someone who had something to prove. Did you? I did. And now? She looked at the board, the empty park, the fading clouds. Now I move because I can. He nodded. They didn't play that day. The board stayed set, untouched. Not because they were avoiding the game, but because, for once, the game wasn't the point. Later, as the sun began to lower behind the buildings and the streetlights hummed to life, Inna stood and pulled her hood up, but this time it wasn't to hide. It was just habit, one she was slowly growing out of. Walter stood too. She looked at him and said, "Let's go home." And this time she meant it.